right now we are spending enormously on the Iran war. They're asking for $1.6 trillion for our next military budget to make up for the failed missiles, the missiles that we're using on this failing war with Iran. It just kind of feels like this president and
we
prior
also have an
Republican
obligation
presidents
to NATO to get up to 5% of our GDP.
That's
and
not
even that
affecting the
number
national
would
debt
be
in this
less
way.
than 5%.
Adam Mockler joined Abby Phillip's show to challenge a couple of MAGA supporters, this time in a heated debate over the hypocrisy surrounding tariffs, price controls, and the growing national debt. We're going to go through the clips from Adam Mockler's appearance on Abby Phillip's show, and of course, I'll add my own thoughts and commentary throughout the discussion. So, let's take a closer look at what happened and break this whole thing down together.
For years, MAGA has slammed socialism and communism, but tonight, the face of the movement is announcing price controls. Yes, right here in America. That's in response to a crisis partly of his own making. Today, Donald Trump announced that he's negotiated a deal to lower beef prices by temporarily allowing beef to be imported into the U.S. without triggering high tariffs. Trump says that the imported beef will come at a 25% discount to current market prices. The cost of beef has skyrocketed amid a drop in the number of U.S. cattle, persistent consumer demand, and limits on cattle from Mexico, where ranchers are confronting a flesh-eating parasite. Now, Trump's 50% tariff on Brazil, a major beef exporter, are also making things worse. But as the president faces criticism within his own party for undercutting domestic beef production, he won't even say where this foreign beef is coming from.
Which countries did you make that deal with? What are the sources of the beef deal?
I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries, but they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef, and it's something that we need.
I guess by that answer, you should probably also be asking yourself, is this deal even a real thing if he won't tell you who's made it with him? But Pete, I mean, it's a double whammy. You got the tariffs, and then you're going to import temporarily a bunch of new beef and then discount it to American beef. That's wild, which is why the response from the cattle community has been explosive today.
Yeah, it's the right end goal, lowering prices, but at least based on what we know, it's the wrong path to get there. The biggest question, as you just pointed out, this beef coming from. Beef does not have the shelf life of Twinkies. This stuff doesn't last forever. So depending on where it's coming from, is it coming on a slow boat? Is it coming on planes? We don't know because the administration hasn't answered these questions. And some of it is also window dressing. I mean, 80% of the beef that's consumed in this country is produced here. And so now you're going to bring in beef. You're going to lower those prices. What's that going to do? What's that impact on prices of beef that is made here? How that's going to impact the bottom line?
It's putting more downward
a lot of
pressure
stuff that's going on there. But I do, to your point real quick, you know, the American Farm Bureau Federation is among those groups, and they have been staunch supporters. Their members have been of this president. They have been with him every step of the way. And the very first words of the statement they put out was, quote, farmers and ranchers are extremely disappointed. That was a strong statement for them to make in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, Meriwether Farm says it's a betrayal. Zippy Duvall, who's the president of the Farm Bureau, as you pointed out, said that this was...
And just to clarify, the guy's name is Zippy Duvall. Zippy Duvall. But before we hear what Adam Mockler has to say, there's something worth pointing out here. Trump is claiming that this beef is going to be the highest quality available. But that claim becomes a little harder to take seriously when you remember what happened with Trump steaks. The brand launched in 2007, but the sharper image dropped it after only about 2 months because sales were extremely poor. So when Trump talks about knowing exactly what qualifies as the highest quality beef, you have to wonder just how much experience he really has with that standard.
Cattlemen's Beef Association says no cow-calf producer in America is asking for increased imports. Again, I want to know. The president does not have a strong grasp on economics. I think that is pretty clear. But why is there nobody around the president that's telling him why this is not a great idea if he cares about American cattle producers?
Yeah, I want them to tell him just simple economics. If taking off the tariff lowers the prices, then putting on tariffs actually does increase prices, as we have been saying. And it's unfortunate because this is a consumer affordability problem. Selfishly, I need the price of beef to drop. I am a carnivore. We've got to get back to eating more beef. But this is really unfortunate for ranchers and for farmers. We've seen some of the highest foreclosures in the past few years. We saw Republicans from Montana and from Nebraska on the Republican side release pretty significant statements about their disappointment in this. I think it is the administration really undercutting a group of people that have been quite loyal to him from the beginning. And now I have to ask them, What did you gain from that loyalty to this president?
And I'm going to have to agree with you on this point. I think the ranchers absolutely do have reason to be upset about this, but we have to remember it's only a 90-day import valve. So I think if it goes longer than that 90 days, well, then they're really going to have something to complain about.
You know, I agree with what you guys said. I hate to say this, but I agree with what Pete Seat said this time. I think that what I find funny is that all of Trump's big magic policy announcements are just reversing prior policies that he put in place. So he put the highest tariffs on beef that we've ever seen in American history, and now he's having this sudden realization that he can artificially lower prices and import them from some unknown country. He's constantly saying that oil prices are dropping. The Strait of Hormuz is about to open it back up. Dog, you're the one that literally effed this up in the first place. You screwed it up. You're the one that made the Strait of Hormuz close down. So I think in the position where we're in right now, it just feels like Trump is reversing his own policies and declaring victory. It's not really good.
Well, and to answer your question real quick, you mentioned the senator from Montana, Tim Sheehy. The American Farm Bureau Federation put it in their statement. They have been talking to the administration for over a year because the president has threatened this, I think, on 3 occasions, and they've said, don't do it. So people have been telling him, I don't know about within the White House, but allies have been saying, sir, do not do this. And he did it anyway.
And can we talk about
also just, first, this is the point that you're making in part, the tariffs are the problem, okay? Rising prices are happening in part because he decided to arbitrarily slap tariffs on virtually the entire world and then carve out random carve-outs for different industries where they were able to get to him in the Oval Office. That is no way to conduct economic policy. And that's why we're seeing this sort of schizophrenic response in the economy.
And it's to a very precarious industry because if we look at the context of what cattle farmers are dealing with too, there's the screwworm issue that's coming over from Mexico. They've dealt with droughts. They've dealt with dwindling herds. I think anybody that even knows just a small fraction about what ranchers go through understands that for a lot of people, it's a 90-day window, but this really might be the tipping point for some folks.
So Trump was also asked today about his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, intervening in the bond markets because the bond yields have been going up, which is, in shorthand, bad for the economy. The Treasury decided to buy these bonds back in order to lower the bond yields, but then they just went right back up. And here's what Trump said he might do about it in the future.
Did you direct Secretary Bessent to intervene in the bond market?
No, not at all. No, he's a very capable man. He wanted to do it. He's very good at it. He has a good touch, very good natural touch for the bonds and interest, and he did that, yeah.
The yields have come back up since then. Have you talked to him about another type of intervention? Is that something he will be doing?
We have many types of intervention. That's one. The ultimate intervention is our military, and if we have to use that, we will.
Not sure what that's about.
He's going to bomb the bond market.
He's going to sick the military on the bond market. What is he talking about?
I don't know, honestly. But I think that right now, when I look at the economy and I look at what young people should be worried about, the national debt is a huge, huge issue. Donald Trump himself is responsible for 29% of the national debts. It accumulated under his watch. Now we pay $1 trillion per year just in the interest. That's going to continue to accumulate. And we're going to have to pay for that. My generation, you guys, it's really bad.
But we're going to be honest about the national debt. It is a bipartisan problem that requires a bipartisan solution.
Here we go again. Donald Trump is responsible for nearly a third of it, but then Pete Seat, yes, Pete Seat, imagine actually having that name, jumps in with the classic, yeah, but what about the Democrats? For a brief moment, Adam Mockler actually appears to be on the same page as these MAGA pundits, Pete Seat and Amy Robbins, and they're practically singing Kumbaya together. But naturally, that agreement does not last very long, because before you know it, we get the predictable, yeah, but what about the Democrats? Argument once again.
A lot of people are responsible, not just presidents. It's not just presidents because they signed the bills. Congress appropriates the money. If you look at it,
how much is Trump asking for our military?
Barack Obama in his 8 years added more to the debt, double more than George W. Bush did.
He added 16%.
Joe
Trump
Biden in his
29%.
only term added more than Donald Trump did in his first term. So this is a bipartisan problem. You want to pin it just on Donald Trump because that's what you do.
He said he was going to end the deficit on day one.
Real courage from both parties to tackle the problem. You can't just cut waste, fraud, and abuse. You can't just raise taxes on the rich.
Abuse. I thought Doge 249,000
They never said that it would eliminate
They said they would balance the deficit. Elon Musk said they were going to remove.
He said $2 billion, then what?
He said $2 trillion.
$2 trillion,
then he said
$1 trillion,
and they didn't get anywhere close to that.
The facts are, right now we are spending enormously on the Iran war. They're asking for $1.6 trillion for our next military budget to make up for the failed missiles, the missiles that we're using on this failing war with Iran. It just kind of feels like this president and
we
prior
also have an
Republican
obligation
presidents.
to NATO to get up to 5% of our GDP.
That's
and
not
even
affecting
that
the
number
national
would
debt
be
in this
less
way.
than 5% of our GDP. You can't have everything, Adam. Like, if you
Republican
want to do
presidents-
that on behalf of our allies, we have to actually spend money on defense.
Pete, I mean, I think you're right. Obviously, it is a bipartisan issue. But I also think that you will have to acknowledge that it's going to require some sacrifices. And so far, this administration has expressed zero interest in any sort of restraint in terms of spending. They added to the deficit last year with the big, beautiful bill. They want to add to the deficit more with this budget request for the DoD. They are not even thinking about where they can make significant and meaningful cuts to spending, which is going to be necessary in order to get this under control. You know, I think it was Scott Besson who said, we're going to grow our way out of this. No one thinks we're going to grow our way out of this.
We can bomb our way out of this, I think.
We have to grow and cut our way out of this mess. Otherwise, we'll be here for a long time. Next for us, J.D. Vance.
Adam Mockler made a strong point at the end when he questioned whether the country can really spend its way out of the situation by simply bombing its way through the problem, and Abby Phillip did not really follow up on that argument. What makes this especially interesting is that we have seen a similar pattern under Republican administrations before, where spending rises, the national debt grows substantially, and yet the same politicians continue presenting themselves as champions of limited government. The problem is that small government often seems to mean fewer resources for ordinary Americans, while enormous government spending becomes completely acceptable when it involves defense contractors, military programs, or policies that can benefit Donald Trump and the people connected to him. And the scale of what we are seeing now is difficult to ignore. Then, of course, Pete Seat comes back with the familiar response, asking what about the Democrats? But Democrats cannot simply be used as an excuse for every decision being made today, because Donald Trump is the president right now, and his administration has direct control over major federal spending priorities. As Adam Mockler pointed out, Trump is backing a defense budget approaching $1.5 trillion. Whether you want to describe it as a military budget, a defense budget, or a war budget, while Republicans are simultaneously arguing that the government cannot afford programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, child care, and other services that millions of Americans depend on. If that approach continues, the financial situation could become even more difficult by the time Trump eventually leaves office, whenever that may be, and Democrats could once again find themselves dealing with the consequences of policies they did not create. That has happened repeatedly in American politics, with one party inheriting major economic and fiscal problems and then being expected to deal with the aftermath. But I want to hear what you think about Adam Mockler's argument on Abby Phillip's show. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below.